The second way we rectify our flame on an electronic circuit is with a flame sense rod. There's a couple manufacturers out there right now that are using two-rod verification. Well, why a two-rod? On some of the circuits, you have a high voltage output for arcing. Arcs at about 1800 degrees, it ignites the pilot. The second rod is actually flame rectification. This rod is in proximity to where the flame is, and most of the time we put a grounding wire on the pilot assembly. What we're looking for is a leak to ground. Well, you might say, well, there's a big gap there. How are you going to fill that gap? We're going to fill it with flame. The ionization of the flame actually allows us to sense ground through this rod, through the flame, to ground. We get a reading at the ignition control module telling us that we've sensed through the flame to ground. And then the ignition control module turns on the main valve, which is your main burner. You've verified ignition control, everything's come on, you have pilot gas, your flame sense is right, turns on the main burner. Other manufacturers, they might use a single pole ignition control igniter. All right, so what does that mean? Well, they have a little bit more of a complex ignition control module that not only can arc through the flame sense rod for ignition, but it can also sense the microamps to ground. So depending on what ignition control module you're using, you might have one flame rod, you might have an igniter rod. One of the things you'll notice is if you go out and you're having low flame millivolt amperage, which you can measure on most of these controllers, FV, that 2-point terminal, is a tester. Well, you can also measure on your meter in microamps, DC microamps. Most of these have a place to check what your sense is coming in. If it has an igniter rod and a sense location, you can see that it's a one-piece ignition control or a two-piece ignition control. This would go with this ignition control module because it's got a sense and it's got an arc.